Hey everybody, my name is Patrick Sist. I'm a Senior Solutions Architect at Flowable and very excited to give you a brief demo of the Flowable platform today. We're going to do this based on a real life example, based on a real use case that we worked on together with a company from the healthcare industry. But before we dive into the demo, let me give you a brief introduction to the Flowable platform as a whole. Flowable is built on three main principles. First, flexibility. We do not provide an out-of-the-box solution for a specific industry or to solve a specific challenge. Instead, we provide a platform for organizations so that they can implement workflows based on their own requirements. This is made possible thanks to the low-code and no-code approach that Flowable has. That means that even business modeler, business analysts without a technical background can create and modify workflows from end to end without necessarily needing to code. Of course, those no-code and low-code capabilities are never limiting you, since you can always write your own source code, both for the backend and the front end. This is made possible thanks to the openness that is built in the Flowable platform. We have open standards at our core, BPMN, CMMN, and DMN for workflow management, but we also have openness when it comes to integration into existing IT landscapes. These three principles, flexibility, low-code, and openness, make up the Flowable platform. This platform contains four main products, and if we look at it from the life cycle of a workflow, then of course we first want to create it, to model it. And for that, we have Flowable Design, our no-code and low-code modeler that allows us to create workflows end to end. We then want to ensure that they do what they should do, and for that we have Flowable Inspect, our automated testing and debugging tool. After creating and testing those workflows, we want to actually publish them and execute them on a workflow engine. And for that, we have Flowable Work that also comes with an out-of-the-box UI that you can use, but are not forced to use, of course. And then last but not least, if a lot of workflows are running on Flowable at the same time, you want to keep an overview. And for that, we have Flowable Control, our administrator cockpit that enables you to get quick insights into what's going on in Flowable. Today, we're going to look at this use case from the healthcare industry, patient treatment, and we're going to see how it is modeled in Flowable Design, and afterwards how we can execute it in Flowable Work. So let me switch over to Flowable Design. Here we can see the overall model of this workflow, modeled according to the CMMN standard. CMMN, that stands for case management, and this is exactly what we're looking at here. And even without understanding how that standard works in detail, we can get really quickly an overview of what's going on in that treatment that we're processing here. First of all, we have an onboarding stage where we want to check whether that patient already exists, and we create a new patient if it doesn't exist yet. We have a pre-processing stage where several tasks need to be completed, for example, for the billing, and we need to get approval by a pharmacist. And then after all that is done, we finally start with the treatment itself, where we need a lot of flexibility to execute certain interventions that are pre-planned, but also to schedule new interventions ad hoc if it's required. Of course, that doesn't include all the logic that we need to execute that workflow. Behind all these boxes, there are additional configurations or even additional process models. Here, for example, to check whether a patient exists or not, we have a process model that uses the out-of-the-box building blocks that Flowable offers to implement that logic. You can see that for both BPMN models here, as well as CMMN models here, we have a large palette of different out-of-the-box models that we can just drag and drop into our workflows and connect them and configure them according to how we need them to be configured. Of course, just having those CMMN cases and BPMN processes is not enough for an end-to-end modeling of our workflows. We need additional models. And that's where Flowable Design really starts to shine, because Flowable Design offers you to define additional workflow logic based on other low-code and no-code models. For example, we have models to create decision tables, to implement business decisions. We even have models to create interfaces to connect to external systems, for example, over REST, as we can see it here, or we can define the data structure of our data in so-called data objects. Obviously, in workflows that include humans, we also need some form of UI elements. And for that, we have a dedicated form editor, where again, we can use a drag and drop approach to create our forms with a lot of out-of-the-box elements. Here you can see an example of how a form to create a new intervention could look like. And in fact, we're going to see that afterwards as well once we execute that workflow. Another requirement that often comes up is that especially managers want to have an overview of all the workflows that are in progress, and in our case, of all the treatments that are currently happening. And for that, we can create so-called pages where we can see that we have a graphical overview on the top right, we have some ways to filter our treatments, and then a table that displays all the treatments. All of this that we're going to see in the workflow afterwards is modeled purely with those no-code and low-code building blocks, and we do not need any Java or front-end code at all. So let's publish this on the Flowable workflow engine and then actually execute it. For that, I'm going to switch over to Flowable Work. As I said, Flowable Work is our out-of-the-box UI to interact with those workflows. This can really look and feel how you want it to look and feel, so you can heavily customize this. Here at the moment, we can see the default version, and I'm logged in as an administrator user, so I can see a lot of out-of-the-box functionality on the left-hand side. For example, an employee that often interacts with different workflows or needs to manage different tasks that are assigned to them will only see those models or those features. And managers, on the other hand, that are interested in reports and dashboards will make use of those features in more detail. However, for now, let's focus on the application that we've just seen. You can see that right away, we can see a dashboard, a page that we just modeled in Flowable Design. We have some graphs on the top right, and then we have an overview of all the treatments that are currently going on, and we can filter them according to our own needs. To start a new treatment, there are different ways. We could, of course, send a REST request, an event on an event-driven architecture, or even an email or a WhatsApp message. For this demo, we're going to keep it simple. And instead of using an external system to trigger a new treatment, we're going to do it here in the UI. If I click on that button, we can again see a form that was modeled in Flowable Design, where we can insert some patient information, some information about the treatment that we want to start, and we can also decide whether we want to do the installation that is needed for that treatment, whether we want to schedule that right now, or we want to schedule it later. For the interventions that I mentioned that are part of all the treatments, we have some templates available that directly give us some interventions out of the box. So here we can see that one intervention is going to take place after 1 week, the next one after 4 weeks, and we have a final measurement after around 2 months. We're of course going to see afterwards how we can schedule new interventions if it becomes necessary. So let's create our new workflow. And we are directly led now to a case-specific view. So on the left-hand side, everything that you see here is specific to that one treatment that we just initiated. We can even have a look at the diagram, and then you will see the same steps that we previously saw in Flowable Design. We already went through the onboarding, where we checked whether that patient existed, and you can in fact see that we were able to find that patient in the external system and import some data from that patient from the external system. Now we are in the second stage, the pre-processing, where we need to complete different tasks. More specifically, if we look at the open task, we can see that we have 3 open tasks. One of them is assigned to the billing team, where we need to configure the billing. This should be done within the next 24 hours. And here, Flowable is also very powerful because we can easily model what should happen if this due date is actually passing by without the task being completed. So we can automatically send reminders or assign the task to somebody else. Let's look at the task. And here, of course, we can again really define what this should look like. We can see that in this task, we automatically created a PDF based on the information that was provided in the patient form originally. The billing team could now complete something and also finish that task. And then if we look at the open task, we can see that only 2 tasks are remaining. One of those tasks is assigned to the pharmacist team, where they have to approve the treatment that was suggested. For that, they can see the form that we filled out with all the necessary information and also the interventions that are scheduled. Now, to me, that looks good, so I'm going to approve it, which only leaves me with one more task. Here we need to set an installation date for the installation of the physical device at home of the patient. So let's open that task. And here we cannot complete it yet. Instead, we just need to claim it first. And after we claim that task, we can configure this, fill in the necessary details, and also complete it then. Now, if we look at the diagram again, we can see that we successfully completed the pre-processing phase, and now we are in the actual treatment phase. If we get an overview of our treatment, we can see all the interventions that are scheduled, and we can, of course, also create new interventions. So let's say we urgently need to call the patient. Then we can schedule a new intervention by just clicking this button. We can fill in the intervention and the respective things that need to be done, when it should be done. Let's say it should be done today, and by whom. Let's say the medical team needs to call the patient. We can even put in a description, submit it, and immediately this will create a new intervention that is directly active because it should be done today. So if we look at the open task, then we can see that this created a new task assigned to the medical team. We can look into it, have all the instructions, and we can also complete a comment and then finish the task. So let's say all is good. I called the patient. If I complete this, then this task will be completed, but we of course still have an overview over everything that's going on for that specific treatment. We can also see who completed the task when. Furthermore, we have a detailed audit log where we could write business relevant information and log it for consistency, but also for potential audits in the future. Now, there are a lot of additional capabilities where we can, for example, chat internally with other employees or even with our patients. We can have an overview of all the documents that we have as part of a treatment, or we can also look at participants that are involved in that treatment and potentially add new participants to it. However, I don't want to go that far at the moment, but instead leave it at this. I hope that I was able to show you how we can use Flowable design and the low-code, no-code capabilities to create a sophisticated workflow end-to-end, and how we can use Flowable work to execute it, to have a detailed business audit log, as well as a technical audit log that really documents everything that was going on for a specific workflow. Now, if you have questions, feel free to let us know in the comments or send over an email. We're very happy to talk about your specific challenges in the area of workflow automation, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next video. Thanks so much for watching, and see you soon.